time to the outstanding leader of the Democratic Party and indeed our country, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi.
Gentlelady from California is recognized for 1 1/4 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman from New York for yielding. I congratulate him on his, as always, excellent leadership on behalf of the middle-class working families in America. I salute him for his excellent presentation today. Mr. Speaker, today the House is considering the ultimate values debate. The question before us today is, do we want to cut taxes for the ultra super rich, or instead do we first want to give hardworking Americans a raise? Do we want to live in an aristocracy, or do we want to live in a democracy? Do we want to perpetuate wealth or reward work? The estate tax is central to our democracy. It is rooted in our commitment to create a strong and vibrant middle class and to give every American the opportunity to achieve the American dream. After the Gilded Age, in which the elites of the time held power and wealth that far, far, far outstripped what the average American had, America decided to go in a new direction. One of America's great Republican presidents, Theodore Roosevelt, made the argument for an estate tax, saying, and I quote, that the really big fortune, the swollen fortune, by the mere fact of its size, acquires qualities which differentiate it in its kind as well as its degree from what is possessed by men of relatively small means. Therefore, Theodore Roosevelt said, I believe in a graduated tax on big fortunes properly safeguarded against evasion. Democrats believe that we must create wealth. We recognize that we must reward entrepreneurship and risk, and we must encourage hard work. That's why Democrats supported a targeted estate tax relief for small businesses and farmers and families that would ensure 99.7% of all Americans don't pay any estate tax. This is in the spirit of Theodore Roosevelt, targeting the vast fortunes that differ not only in the quantity of wealth, but in the kind. I salute Congressman Earl Pomeroy for his leadership in giving Congress an alternative that is morally and fiscally responsible. Unfortunately, once again, the Republican leadership, just as they have blocked a vote on the minimum wage, are blocking Mr. Pomeroy's option to bring his proposal to the floor, which is responsible, which is paid for, and which is fair to all Americans. And under Mr. Pomeroy's proposal, only the top 0.3, that means 99.7% of Americans, most people in America, would not pay any estate tax. But it would leave that 0.3%, the very, very super wealthy, to pay their fair share. There's a lot of very few people involved, but a great deal of money. We will have a chance to vote on the motion to recommit. Unfortunately, we will not have the time to debate it as an alternative. We have these questions that have come before us when we're talking about this. We're talking about giving $800 billion to a few families in America. Democrats stand for fiscal responsibility, pay-as-you-go budgets, and no new deficit spending. Republicans instead have put forth a bill that will cost the American people, again, almost $800 billion. $800 billion that we don't have, that we're going to have to borrow. Our national debt is becoming a national security issue. Countries that now own our debt It's over $1 trillion already, and this doesn't include this $800 billion. Those countries that now own our debt will not only be making our toys, our clothes, and our computers, they will be soon making our foreign policy. They have too much leverage over us. With this bill today, the Republicans are giving tax cuts to the wealthy and asking the middle class to pay for it by writing checks to China and Japan or for the interest payments on the debt and ultimately the payment on principal. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Let me get this straight. We're at war in Iraq. Many of the same people who wanted to support the stay the course that the president is on in Iraq, which has around a $400 billion price tag on it, that's off budget. They don't want to pay for that. And now they're saying we're going to even give, and that's a huge figure. And now the Republicans are saying not only that, not only are we not paying for the war, it's off budget, we'll just heap that debt onto future generations. They're saying we're going to give twice as much as that to a few families in America. It's so unfair. The same week that we're taking this up, as I said earlier, this is the ultimate values debate. How can a person of conscience say to the Congress, we do not support an increase in the minimum wage. Instead, we're going to give $800 billion to the wealthiest people in America. The minimum wage is $5.15 an hour. It hasn't been raised in 9 years. This is a shame. It is a disgrace. It is unfair. And what does the leader of on the Republican side say about the minimum wage? He says, Mr. Boehner says, I've been in this business for 25 years, and I've never voted for an increase in the minimum wage. I'm opposed to it, and I think a vast majority of the Republican conference is opposed to it. So thank you, Mr. Boehner, for making a differentiation for us. You're for $800 billion for the wealthiest family in America and not an increase of over $5.15 an hour for America's working family. So instead of giving 7 million Americans a raise by increasing the minimum wage, again, Republicans are proposing $800 billion. It's nearly $1 trillion as a gift to the wealthy. This is Robin Hood in reverse. We are stealing from the middle class to give to the wealthy. The Pope Benedict just recently put out his new encyclical, God is Love. And in his encyclical, he quoted St. Augustine when he wrote, this is in the Pope's encyclical, you can find it there. He talked about the role that politicians have and that a government should be just and we should be promoting justice. And he goes on, Pope Benedict does, to quote St. Augustine. He says, a state that is not governed according to justice would be just a bunch of thieves. This is a pope saying this in an encyclical, quoting a saint. A state which is not governed according to justice would be just a bunch of thieves. I ask this Congress, is it justice to steal from the middle class, to give tax cuts to the ultra super rich? It is not just, and it isn't an injustice, and it is an injustice we cannot afford. Americans can no longer afford President Bush and the Republicans. It's time for a new direction. We can begin by rejecting this estate tax giveaway to the wealthy and insist on a vote to increase the minimum wage. That would be a real values judgment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The time of the gentlelady has expired. Gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of democracy.